Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Janice Love, also known as the First Lady Coach, and welcome to session number 5 of my Pearl Power series. I second that emotion. Let's go. Night. We are going to be talking about from embarrassed to embraced. Now, as we have been talking about the various emotions, we have been coming from 6 different categories, whether it's fear, anger, sadness, surprise, joy, or love. So we're taking those challenging emotions or those that can often be seen as negative and that can wreak havoc on your mental health, your wellness, as even your physical health. And we are moving them over to the joy and the happy side. All right. So again, tonight we're going to be talking about from embarrassed to embrace. Now, when you think about embarrassed, it sits on the fear side of the emotion wheel. When one feels embarrassed, and I'm going to ask you in a second after I describe this, if you're able to second that emotion. When we feel embarrassed, we feel awkward, we feel self-conscious, or it can actually feel like shame. Typically, it's experienced when someone commits a socially unacceptable or frowned upon act that is witnessed by or revealed to others. So when we are embarrassed, a number of things happen. What does embarrassment feel like? And again, as I'm explaining some of these, let me know if you can second that emotion. When we are embarrassed, it's a detriment to our confidence, and even sometimes our self-worth. And it's not just momentarily. For instance, you go to the bathroom and walk out with toilet paper on your shoe. That can happen to anybody, right? And it doesn't carry out throughout your entire life, right? It's just a short-term kind of thing. But when we are dealing with embarrassment, oftentimes it's long lasting. Okay. There could be mild to severe levels of discomfort when it comes to being embarrassed. Some embarrassment can be so difficult that you want to avoid situations, you want to hide, you don't want anybody you don't want to be around anybody. Sometimes when we're embarrassed, we might try to mask it. Like I know that if I get embarrassed, I might try to mask it by laughing or smiling, right? So plenty of times I've come out here and done some strange things and I was embarrassed, right? And I tried to cover it up by laughing or smiling because that's all I could do, right? Or we can actually become angry when we are embarrassed, especially if someone has done something to cause us to be embarrassed. It can cause us to feel tense. I mean, think about it. When we are embarrassed, we have biological reactions, whether our stomach starts to turn or whether we turn colors, whatever it is, it can also be physical, and we fear. Think about it. If we get embarrassed in one situation, we fear that it can happen again. We can feel humiliated. Can anybody second this emotion that you have dealt with embarrassment or you have felt embarrassed in any kind of situation? So there are many times ways that can cause us to feel embarrassed. And let me talk about those. First of all, we could have unwanted attention to private matters. Think about us in our roles being married to influencers and being married to ministry or being married to pastors. Many times people are just itching to find out what's going on in our personal lives. And if they can get any piece of information, they may try to exploit it. So there might be unwanted attention that you have to private matters or even your personal flaws. Has anybody ever brought attention to your personal flaws or any mishaps? Or even if you have a shy personality, people and you get attention that you didn't want, that can cause you to feel embarrassed as well. Because not everybody wants any kind of attention. Sometimes it can be good attention. We don't want any attention if you are a shy person. So that can cause you to feel embarrassed. Maybe you've done something and your personal action has caused you to be caught in a lie, or you have made a mistake. That can cause embarrassment. Let's say you're inappropriately dressed. Let's say you show up at something and you are inappropriately dressed. You just want to hide in the corner. You just want to rush out and try to find something else to wear. Can anybody second that emotion? I know there have been times when I put on the wrong thing and showed up and had to endure the entire event. And all the while thinking everybody's looking at me embarrassed, right? Or let's say we've been gossiped about or criticized. That can cause embarrassment. Maybe someone's made a derogatory comment about your appearance or behavior. So many people have the nerve to criticize us, right? Because they think they know what we should do, what we should have, how we should act, all of the above. And so people are so quick to criticize. Let's say you've been rejected by someone. That's another reason to feel embarrassed. And the list goes on and on and on. Again, you could be the focus of attention and you don't want to be the focus of attention. And here's a good one, you all. When you don't know something and you have to admit that you don't know something, or let's say you made up something and get caught at it, right? Then that can leave you extremely embarrassed, especially if you know you have the wrong answer. Oftentimes, because of confidence, we don't jump out there if we don't know the answer. But every now and then you'll find yourself in a situation where you don't know something and it causes you to feel embarrassed. One of the main things that can cause us to feel embarrassed is privacy violations. People nosing around in our business can cause us to feel embarrassed. Can anybody second this emotion yet? Have you been in a situation where you have been embarrassed? It could be the environment you're in. Again, it could be someone, family member, partner, um, or someone else who could embarrass you. Remember, if you read Michelle Obama's first book, she talked about her first visit to the White House, and she had one of her daughters with her. And what happened was the daughter was acting uninterested and really being very nonchalant. And she pulled her aside and said, "Don't embarrass me." Have you ever been in that situation where you felt like somebody else was about to embarrass you and you tried to put a stop to it as soon as possible? Can anybody second that emotion? Yes, there are so many ways where we end up feeling embarrassed. So today, what I want to introduce you to is someone in the Bible who dealt with embarrassment. The other thing I wanted to say is the older we get, the better we get at not feeling embarrassed about anything because we have seen it all. Like right now, I'm not going to be embarrassed because I need to take some water before I choke, right? So thank God, the older we get, the better we get about feeling embarrassed. So let's talk about what embrace means. Embrace means that you are included, that you are accepted, you are supported willingly and enthusiastically. You have received warm approval. Doesn't that emotion sound so much better than being embarrassed? So, are you ready to learn how you can go from embarrassed to embrace? Let's go straight to the Bible and let us visit one of my friends, the woman at the well. She went from embarrassed to embrace. So let's talk about the situation that the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well, let's talk about the situation that she dealt with. First of all, she was practicing avoidance. Okay. She was practicing avoidance because she was dealing with some embarrassment. And we all know the story of the embarrassment that she encountered, which was the fact that She had been her marital history was a source of embarrassment for her. And we know that because of her avoidance tactics. Now, we know that she decided daily, and we're assuming daily, we only know about one day, but we know that she went to draw water at the well at a time that most women wouldn't be at the well, or nobody would probably be at the well. It was hot in Samaria, and she came in at noon. Now, you all know if you live in a hot climate, it is hot around noon, and somebody's waiting on it to cool off. Now, there's different explanations that some people go early in the morning to draw water. Some people wait until it's cool late in the evening. But the fact that this woman went to draw a well at noon says she was avoiding other people. And again, we know her marital history because Jesus actually helps to reveal it to her that she had been married 5 times and that she had was shacking as well. So think about embarrassment. I know in my own life, it took me years to explain to people or even to admit to those that I had been married and divorced, right? Because especially in this arena, in the church arena, in the holy roller arena, that could often be seen as something just so awful, so simple, and again, could cause one to feel embarrassed. So we know people were talking about her, right? And she knew it too, which is why she avoided people. So her first circumstance, again, was the fact that she avoided others. And and she even had to do it in order to take care of her household. So again, she went to the well in the middle of the hot day, again, just so that she could avoid others. So that's her first circumstance. Okay. The second circumstance is that she had a conversation with a man who was a Jew. Now, again, if you know the history here, you know that Jews couldn't stand Samaritans. They thought they was dirty and nasty. And secondly, you knew that women in those days could not have a conversation openly with a man. So she had two things working against her: the fact that she was a woman and the fact that she was from Samaria. So she had the conversation. This is a circumstance for her because she was probably afraid to even have the conversation, even though Jesus initiated, right? So she was surprised that he would even talk to her. And again, we know that the Samaritans were hated by the Jews, and men especially did not talk to strange women. Okay. So how does she go from embarrassed to embrace? Are you all ready to find out? So that you too, if you're dealing with situations where you are dealing with embarrassment, that you too can go from being embarrassed to embrace. In my own life, again, I have seen the joy of moving from embarrassed to embrace. Again, y'all don't know how they treated me when I wasn't a pastor's wife the first time. After I divorced my first husband, y'all don't know how they treated me. Whether it was other pastors' wives or other pastors or church people, you don't know how they treated me. So I was dealing with, in a sense, an embarrassment, right? Until I got to the point where God put me in a position by choosing me to move from embarrassed to embrace. Hallelujah. Don't you just look at God. All right. So how do you go from embarrassed to embrace? The first thing that the woman at the well did in order to move from embarrassed to embrace is that she was transparent. As she got into the conversation with Jesus and he said, "Go get your husband," she said, "I don't have one." Now, she openly admitted and she was transparent about her situation. Now, the way I see it, wouldn't you rather tell your own story rather than somebody making up a story for you? Because you know they're going to add twists and turns to it until it makes it look like you are a pitiful shame, right? So wouldn't you rather tell your own story? Then that way you don't have to wait on other people to make judgments about you. So be transparent and tell your own story. I don't have anything to hide. This was God's will for my life, that I would have experienced divorce and end up being married to a pastor again. I don't have to be embarrassed about that, because again, God uses that to be able to bless somebody else. So all I can do is be transparent, you all, and tell you how God had moved me from embarrassed to embrace. All right. So the first thing again is that she was transparent. Now, the second thing that helped her to move from embarrassed to embraced is that she recognizes Jesus's power. So as this conversation goes, and again, this woman was outspoken, because she wasn't going to let Jesus just tell her anything. She was going to question, she was going to ask things. She knew her history, but because she listened and because she asked questions, she was able to recognize that Jesus had power, and therefore she didn't have to worry about whether or not people were going to see her. She no longer felt ashamed about her life. She recognized that he had the power to help her in her situation. So when you think about what you might be going through that has led to some type of embarrassment, you have to recognize that Jesus has the power to take you out of embarrassed to embrace. So, but you have to recognize that. Otherwise, you'll continue to stay over there in the embarrassed stage. All right. So, again, she recognizes Jesus's power, and we too have to have that we have to realize and recognize that Jesus is the one that can deliver us through our situation. All right. Finally, number 3, what she did was how she moved from being embarrassed to embrace is that she emerged from that embarrassment and hiding and avoiding others, and she stepped out to give other people hope. Now, whenever we in our lives, we can give other people hope, that takes us out of that embarrassment to that being embraced. So what did she do? She dropped everything she had, took off running to the people who had been talking about her, to people that she had been trying to avoid, and she went and said, "Come see a man who told me everything about myself." Now again, we're not often willing to admit that somebody knows all about us, right? But she was so excited to share her testimony, and so excited that he could help other people, that she dropped her stuff and went out there and gave others hope. Now, what we do know from the rest of the story is that because they listened to her, because they now embraced her, right? They didn't say, "Oh, that's that trifling skank, right? That's coming out here trying to tell us about Jesus." She was open and transparent and said, "Come see a man who told me everything about myself, and he basically can do the same thing for you." So we all know that again, the whole town ended up begging Jesus to stay, and many people were saved because of what she was willing to do, moving from embarrassed to embrace. After that, folks weren't talking about her anymore. In fact, if they knew that Jesus knew stuff about them as well, they didn't have time to talk about her because they had to worry about themselves. Don't you just love it? Anyway, but that is how you can be like the woman at the well and go from embarrassed to embrace. There any questions